I think personally, I think they've separated their professional lives, but I think what's really a great problem for them now, as of the last few weeks, is that Meghan has got no real income anymore. She's finished.
A man who she abandoned for months to the media and now presents her mother, Doria, speaking for the first time, telling outright lies about her ex-husband. I mean, this was a calculated attempt against the families.
Tom Bower, the legendary royal author, is sharpening his quill for a new edition of his book set to reveal huge secrets inside Prince Harry and Meghan Markle's marriage.
Well, you know, Piers, you're the first.
Tom Bower just dropped a revelation that has people rethinking everything they believed about Harry and Meghan's marriage. According to the longtime royal biographer, there may be a specific clause hidden inside their prenuptial agreement. Page 14, Clause 7, a section Harry reportedly signed without fully realizing how significant it could become later. And once you hear what that clause allegedly outlines, it suddenly raises questions about several recent moves, including Meghan bringing back the public relations firm Sunshine Sachs in January 2026. It also helps explain why financial decisions tied to their business ventures have reportedly been shifting quietly since around 2022. Bower suggests those adjustments may not be random. In his view, the details in that clause could carry major consequences if circumstances around the marriage ever changed. And according to his interpretation, the potential impact could be significant for Harry's financial future. But before even getting into what that clause supposedly says, there's an important reason people are paying attention to Bower's claim in the first place. His reputation in the publishing world is built on decades of investigative work, and that history is a big reason why his statements tend to spark serious discussion.
Versus how limited Prince Harry is, unfortunately, and how his wife trades off her husband's fame and fortune, or not so great fortune now. I mean, this is the problem. But we're still interested because, after all, he's a great character in our modern day.
And so he became hypersensitive and blamed the media for the crashes of his relationships, never thinking that they could have something to do with himself. So he's a very complicated, depressed, unintelligent man who is seeking a role and has got really nobody on whom he could rely, which is in the end where Meghan stepped in. I mean, a needy man met a woman who could help him with his needs.
Very aggressive PR for the Sussexes, got way beyond herself because she really doesn't understand the British royal family or Britain, but understands how to project her clients.
Rather than being dismissed as simple speculation, Tom Bower isn't a casual commentator throwing out rumors from the sidelines. He began his career as a barrister before moving into journalism with the BBC, where he spent years focusing on investigative reporting. Over the course of more than 4 decades, he built a reputation for digging deep into complex stories involving powerful figures and large institutions. Throughout that career, Bower wrote several high-profile biographies, examining the business empires and personal histories of influential individuals. Some of his books focused on controversial media leaders, while others examined high-profile entrepreneurs and entertainment figures. His work often drew attention because of the level of documentation and interviews involved in the research process. That reputation is part of the reason publishers tend to approach his projects carefully. Books covering powerful public figures go through extensive legal review before publication, and the publishers supporting Bower's work are known for ensuring the material meets strict legal standards. In other words, when his books are released, they typically arrive with a significant amount of vetting behind the scenes.
And so I think she got it wrong by leaking it, or even letting anyone know about it.
And of course, the news today that Harry's memoir is going to be published in the near future will just alarm the royal family here in England about what he's actually going to say to earn his money. But I do think that when you're mocked so publicly as they've been, their value begins to nosedive pretty quickly. And I don't think they're finding any more sources of income.
Last week, we brought to you fresh news that Harry had been staying at the San Vicente bungalows to take a break from his family, despite owning a sprawling Montecito property together with Guesthouse. And this week, those rumours are intensifying.
His book about Meghan and Harry, titled Revenge, followed the same approach. During the research process, Bauer reportedly conducted more than 80 interviews with individuals who had interacted with Meghan at different points in her career. Those conversations included people who had worked within royal offices, professionals connected to entertainment projects, and individuals familiar with various contracts and business arrangements surrounding public appearances and partnerships. The goal of that research, according to Bauer, was to build a broader picture of how Meghan's career developed before and after entering the royal spotlight. That meant examining her early acting work, her connections in media and public relations, and the network of advisors who helped shape her public image over time. For many readers, the scale of that research is what gives his claims weight in the public conversation. When Bauer introduces a new detail or raises a new question, it tends to generate discussion because his books often rely on interviews and documents gathered over long periods of investigation. And that's exactly why this alleged prenuptial clause has suddenly become such a major talking point. If Bauer's interpretation is accurate, it could potentially explain several strategic moves that have taken place quietly in the background over the last few years. Financial decisions.
She met Harry, was setting up paparazzi pictures in London. She now acts as if the paparazzi are literally the devil incarnate.
She begged the paparazzi to photograph her and they wouldn't. And when they did, she says, "Oh, I don't want to, I'm hurt." And that ridiculous story about how they first met, the whole thing was a tissue of inaccuracies, to be polite.
Well, because what do you make of that? Because as you know, Harry was always very insistent.
Business partnerships, and even the timing of certain public relations shifts start to look different when viewed through that lens. One example frequently mentioned in discussions is the decision to reconnect with Sunshine Sachs. The firm has been one of the most influential public relations agencies in Hollywood for decades, known for guiding high-profile celebrities through sensitive media situations and shaping narratives during complicated moments in their careers. When Meghan reportedly renewed connections with the firm in early 2026, observers immediately began speculating about the timing. Public relations strategies often signal that something important may be happening behind the scenes, even if the full details are not visible to the public yet. At the same time, analysts who track celebrity business structures have pointed out that several financial arrangements tied to media projects and partnerships have shifted since 2022. Those changes include adjustments to company structures, management, arrangements, and revenue distribution tied to entertainment deals. None of those decisions necessarily mean anything dramatic on their own. High-profile public figures frequently reorganize business structures as their careers evolve. But when multiple adjustments appear across several years, observers sometimes start looking for a larger explanation connecting them together. That's where Bauer's reference to the prenuptial clause enters the conversation. If such a clause exists and contains the kind of legal language he suggests, it could provide a possible explanation for why certain preparations might have taken place quietly over time. Legal agreements between high-profile couples often include detailed provisions covering intellectual property, business ventures.
Many surprises, by the way, tucked away in your book. Everybody is already buzzing because you reveal that Simon is not a fan of Jennifer Lopez. I was not aware of this. You say he can't stand her. So set the record straight for us, Tom. What's his beef with J-Lo?
Well, he just found her just too vain and too self-interested, which seems like he met his own match. But in the end, Simon doesn't really like many celebrities. I noticed when I went with him to the Oprah Winfrey Show and many other places around Hollywood and elsewhere, he's a rather shy guy. He's always afraid of being associated with people who are bigger than him or who might put him in the shade. But in the end, he's pretty critical of people. He doesn't like Elton John. He doesn't like many of the people who are really famous in the music business.
Media rights and earnings connected to brand partnerships. These agreements can become especially complex when both individuals have public careers that involve major commercial projects. Because of that complexity, the specific wording in a single clause can sometimes carry major implications, depending on how circumstances develop years later. Lawyers often spend months negotiating those details before the agreement is finalized. According to Bauer, the clause he references falls into that category of highly specific legal language. It is reportedly written in a way that only becomes relevant under certain conditions tied to future events. That type of structure is common in high-value prenuptial agreements, where the goal is to anticipate different possible scenarios and define how assets or earnings would be handled if those scenarios occur. For now, much of the discussion surrounding Bauer's claim remains focused on interpretation rather than confirmed details. Prenuptial agreements are private legal documents. and the full text is rarely made public unless it becomes part of a court proceeding. Still, the idea that a little notice clause could influence major financial outcomes has captured the attention of royal watchers, legal analysts, and media commentators alike.
In 2016, become an absolute nightmare for them. Despite marrying in St. George's Chapel in Windsor, it seems like life hasn't been so rosy for the couple. They have gone through endless challenges, the vast majority of which are all self-inflicted. And this weekend, we had some new news that seems to kind of reiterate the idea that Meghan Markle, she wants to go back.
And as more people examine the timeline of business moves, partnerships, and public relations decisions surrounding the couple, the speculation around that single page of legal text continues to grow. Tom Bower's reporting style is very different from the fast-moving rumor cycle that often dominates online conversations. Instead of leaning on vague tips or anonymous speculation, he approaches investigations the way he did during his years as a lawyer, building a case around documentation, interviews, and legal interpretation that could withstand serious scrutiny. That method is one reason his claims tend to generate such strong reactions when they appear in print. According to Bower, his research into the marriage agreement between Harry and Meghan involved conversations with legal professionals familiar with how royal marriage contracts are structured. These are not typical celebrity agreements. They combine private legal protections with additional considerations tied to royal protocol, family assets, and the public role associated with royal titles. Bower says that during his investigation, he examined how British royal customs intersect with California law, where Harry and Meghan have been based since relocating to the United States. That intersection is important because California operates under community property rules. Under those rules, assets earned during a marriage are generally considered shared between both spouses, unless a legal agreement specifies otherwise. This legal framework becomes particularly significant when you consider the scale of the couple's entertainment deals and business ventures over the past several years. Media partnerships, streaming projects, publishing agreements, and brand collaborations.
Diana think of Harry attacking William in that way. She'd be appalled by her son's behavior. And that was, again, so nauseating, the way he kept on bringing in Diana. Diana, who appealed to the media all the time, who phoned journalists secretly, who brought Martin Bashir into her office, who cooperated with Andrew Morton, who kept on calling Richard Kay. I mean, this is ridiculous.
Well, I do think that Sussex Overdrive is unbelievable. But I mean, I don't think that he is going to get back in. I mean, I think that there are two reasons. One is I think that William wouldn't allow it. And secondly, the moment he got back to America, he immediately promoted Disney and his trip to Disney World, which showed that he is very commercially minded, which we'll get into later on, which makes it impossible for him. And of course, Meghan wouldn't come back to Britain.
Can generate large revenue streams, and those streams can become complicated when two high-profile partners are involved. Bower argues that a specific clause within the agreement addresses that exact legal overlap. He points to language connected to intellectual property and brand ownership. Intellectual property is a broad category that can include the rights to books, documentaries, media productions, and other creative projects that generate revenue through storytelling and branding. When public figures turn their personal experiences into media content, those stories themselves can become valuable business assets. Contracts often determine who controls the rights to that material, how revenue is distributed, and who maintains ownership if circumstances change in the future. According to Bower's interpretation, the clause he highlights focuses on that kind of ownership structure. Instead of simply dividing earnings from projects, the wording allegedly addresses who holds authority over the broader brand identity connected to those ventures. That includes the stories presented through media deals, the partnerships built around the brand.
Is already talking to divorce lawyers?
So this is kind of interesting. This is the woman that the papers are citing for this reporting is a longtime royal insider, a socialite. She's been right. I've been following her because she's great TV. She's been right about a lot. And she's claiming she's heard from several sources now that he's hired a lawyer, and it happens to be somebody who's a great divorce lawyer and specializes in divorce. And it dovetails on other reports that he is spending a lot of his time in two hotels, one of which is in Montecito, another of which is not too far away, as an escape from her. It's entirely plausible. All they've done for 5 years is complain and moan and see themselves as downtrodden victims. That doesn't tend to spur a lot of feelings of love and happiness and close bonding. I mean, I guess in the crisis mode, it might.
And the intellectual property connected to their public narrative. Bauer suggests that this language could place significant influence in Meghan's hands because she has reportedly played a central role in negotiating several of the couple's major business arrangements. In many business filings and partnership structures tied to their projects, her name appears prominently as a key figure involved in the management of those ventures. That role can matter legally. In business agreements, the individual listed as a manager or primary representative often carries decision-making authority over operations and negotiations. When intellectual property and branding are involved, those positions can influence who ultimately controls the direction of the business. But Bauer claims the most striking part of the story isn't simply the existence of the clause itself. According to the sources he references, the language may have been added later through an amendment to the original prenuptial agreement rather than appearing in the first version signed before the wedding. Amendments to prenuptial agreements are actually more common than many people realize. Couples often update their financial agreements after
her Netflix series and didn't want to, firstly, be seen with Harry, and secondly, didn't want to go somewhere where she'd appear cheap and give it gratis. And this year, she is desperate to be seen.
Yeah.
And that's why she turned up. So I think she has a major problem. Financially and professionally. And I think that Harry has a problem because he's lost his charity centre Bailey in Africa. He better up and all these commercial deals are declining. I think that his reputation is somewhat toxic. And I think Invictus is his only lifeline. And there'll be problems with that too.
I mean, we've seen people leaving Invictus recently. Important, I think that's you mentioned the Disney special.
After major life changes, such as relocating to another country, launching new businesses, or restructuring financial arrangements around growing assets. Legal professionals frequently recommend these updates because circumstances evolve over time. A couple's financial situation 5 years into a marriage can look very different from the moment the original agreement was signed. In this case, Bauer's reporting suggests that an amendment was introduced around 2020, a period when Harry and Meghan were going through several major transitions. That year marked their move away from royal duties, their relocation to California, and the beginning of large-scale media partnerships that quickly drew global attention. From a legal standpoint, that moment would have been a logical time to revisit financial agreements. New business ventures often require updated contracts to clarify ownership, management authority, and intellectual property rights connected to upcoming projects. According to Bauer's sources, the amendments signed during that period contained language connected to the brand and intellectual property structures being created around their media ventures. If accurate, that timing would place the revision directly alongside the formation of several key business projects. Bauer also explained.
Right now, Prince Harry and Meghan Markle spent the week using the With Love Meghan promotional campaign to try and suggest that everything is rosy in their very, very rocky marriage. Not so fast, says Radar Online, which has revealed that the Sussex couple are now sleeping in separate beds. Let me take you through this bombshell, then we're going to get reaction from the royal YouTube sensation, according to Taz. Here's the report, though, from Radar Online. Meghan Markle and Prince Harry's marriage is said to be under major strain as backlash has gotten under the Duchess's skin so much that she's sleeping apart from her husband and wondering whether or not she would be more popular on her own, Radar Online can reveal. Amid ongoing rumours about the Sussexes' marriage being on the rocks, insiders told us Markle is cracking under the pressure of public scrutiny as she tries to claw her way back into Hollywood and launch her lifestyle brand, leaving her marriage to Harry hanging by a thread. Insiders told us Markle is starting to unravel and wonder if she would be better off as a solo act. Meghan is said to have even started to look up divorce lawyers. Sources claimed Harry
explored Meghan's previous experience with legal negotiations during her earlier marriage to film producer Trevor Engelson. Lawyers familiar with that earlier process described her approach to negotiations as extremely detailed and methodical. According to those accounts, every clause and financial arrangement was reviewed carefully during settlement discussions. People who have worked in high-value divorce negotiations often emphasize the importance of long-term planning. Agreements are frequently designed to ensure that each person maintains financial independence and clarity about ownership of future earnings. Bauer's sources suggested that Meghan approached legal negotiations with that type of long-term mindset. During her earlier divorce, the settlement reportedly separated finances cleanly and clearly, avoiding complicated entanglements that could create disputes later. Those experiences may have shaped how later agreements were approached, especially when larger business ventures entered the picture. Entertainment deals, publishing contracts, and brand partnerships can create intricate revenue structures that benefit from clearly defined ownership and management roles. Around the same period that the alleged amendment was introduced, several major projects connected to Harry and Meghan were beginning to take shape. Streaming partnerships were announced, podcast projects were developed, and a charitable organization was established that also functions as a hub for various initiatives and collaborations. When new ventures are launched, legal teams often restructure contracts to reflect the business model being built. Ownership percentages, management authority, and intellectual property rights are all defined within those documents. Bauer argues that this is where the clause he references becomes especially important. If the language places ownership of brand identity and intellectual property primarily under Meghan's control, it could shape how revenue streams connected to those projects are managed. From a legal perspective, intellectual property ownership can be more influential than simple profit sharing. Whoever holds the rights to the brand and the underlying creative material may ultimately control how that content is used in the future. That's why Bauer's interpretation has sparked so much discussion among observers following the story. The idea that a specific clause tied to intellectual property could influence the direction of major media projects adds another layer of complexity to the narrative surrounding the couple's business ventures. For now, however, the full details of the agreement remain private, as prenuptial contracts are confidential documents. Without direct access to the text, much of the conversation remains focused on interpretation rather than confirmed wording. Still, Bauer's reporting has encouraged many people to look more closely at the legal and financial structures behind the couple's public projects. When media partnerships, brand ownership, and intellectual property all intersect within a marriage agreement, even a single clause can become the center of widespread debate.
Their Hollywood misadventure has been more of a nightmare than anything else. And they've gone from poor decision to bad decision to worse decision every single time. And with the hiring of Sunshine Sachs, I couldn't help but think, and Harry going back to the UK more, or wanting to, can't help but think, if the two of them had a time machine and knowing what they know now, could have gone back to 2016, would they have made some different decisions? I can't help but wonder if the answer there is yes. Now, of course, this is just speculative, and they love their children. I'm sure to a certain extent they love each other, but we have a couple who has had a really unnecessarily difficult existence. And that's not the fault of the media. That is not the fault of his family. That's been their fault. Everything that has happened to them has been broadly their fault. And they can't seem to help recognize that. And so what they're doing, though, as things go sort of off the rail, is that they're regressing to, let's say, an earlier stage in life.
The goal, according to the accounts Bauer examined, was simple: avoid shared financial structures that would force continued contact if the relationship ever changed. A clean separation where careers, earnings, and assets could stand independently. That type of planning is common in high-profile relationships where business and personal lives are deeply intertwined. During his research, Tom Bauer discovered that Meghan first worked with the public relations firm Sunshine Sachs in 2017, around the time her relationship with Harry became public. Sunshine Sachs is widely known in the entertainment industry for guiding major public figures through intense media cycles and complicated reputation challenges. The firm has managed communications during major celebrity transitions, including high-profile separations and major image resets. Their team is often brought in when public figures need experienced strategists who understand how narratives unfold in the media. In 2020, however, Meghan and Harry ended their relationship with the firm.
Meghan has got no real income anymore. She's finished.
Right.
The Netflix series is over. There's no great podcast. They don't generate any money. And I don't see where she is going from here. I think she has a major problem. And I think as of this week, the signal for her great problem is that she turned up at Kevin Costner's.
At the time, the explanation given publicly was related to cost considerations. But according to Bauer's reporting, people familiar with the situation suggested a different reason. Meghan reportedly wanted to shift communication strategies toward an internal structure connected to their own organization and in-house media team. For several years after that decision, most of their messaging and announcements came through channels connected directly to their own projects and initiatives. Then something changed. In January 2026, Meghan reportedly brought Sunshine Sachs back into the picture. That move immediately sparked curiosity among observers who track public relations strategies in Hollywood. When a well-known firm like that reappears after several years of separation, people naturally start asking why the timing matters. Bauer argues that the answer may lie in how strategic communication planning works in major life transitions. According to the public relations professionals he consulted, specialized firms are often brought in months before any major public announcement. That period allows them to manage messaging, organize media responses, and shape how the story unfolds in the public eye. But Bauer believes the clearest clues aren't just connected to public relations decisions. He says the more telling signs appear in financial and business moves that began several years earlier. Starting around 2022, Meghan launched a lifestyle venture known as American Riviera Orchard. Unlike earlier projects connected to both Harry and Meghan together, this venture was reportedly structured as a separate entity under her name. Trademark filings connected to the brand also appeared to focus on her individual business identity rather than a joint partnership. Around the same time, she began appearing alone at several business meetings in Los Angeles connected to media.
Dane, what is happening? There is complete and utter chaos going on. The Meg and Herald are taking their rebrands far too literally at this point. Archewell, their charity effort, has not only changed its name from a foundation to Philanthropies, which is even worse branding, I might add, but there is a whole slew of drama going on behind the scenes.
And brand development. Bauer says that pattern mirrors a strategy he observed during his research into her earlier divorce from Trevor Engelson. In that earlier chapter of her life, the transition toward independent professional projects happened gradually before the relationship officially ended. The approach, according to legal professionals Bauer spoke with, is fairly straightforward. Establish independent income streams, separate professional identities, build business structures that operate independently rather than jointly. That way, if circumstances ever shift, the transition becomes simpler from a financial perspective. Bauer believes something similar began unfolding again in 2022. He also examined the financial reality behind some of the couple's major media deals. One of the most widely discussed agreements involved a streaming partnership reported by many outlets to be worth up to $100 million. However, people familiar with entertainment contracts say those figures often represent maximum potential earnings rather than guaranteed payments. Such deals usually pay out in stages as projects are completed and delivered. If fewer projects are produced than originally planned, the total amount earned can end up significantly lower than the headline number. According to individuals Bauer consulted with in the entertainment industry, only a portion of that potential payout was ultimately realized after some projects were completed, while others were canceled or never moved forward. This is where Bauer says his timeline becomes particularly interesting. In 2022, the same year when several planned projects slowed down or changed direction,
go anywhere unless it's with a title, property, and a huge sack of money. Meghan will make a deal to protect herself. Wow. Tasha is with me now.
Yeah.
This is astonishing, but remember, it comes just weeks after that Vanity Fair bombshell that Meghan is already shopping the post-divorce book.
Meghan began filing trademark applications for American Riviera Orchard and setting up legal structures for the brand. At the same time, separate business entities were reportedly established that operated independently from earlier ventures tied to both Harry and Meghan together. Bauer also examined property arrangements connected to their home in Montecito. Financial professionals he consulted explained that high-value properties are sometimes structured in ways that offer legal protections under California housing laws. In addition to property considerations, investment accounts and business holdings can be reorganized over time for tax planning, asset protection, or long-term financial strategy. According to the financial advisors Bauer spoke with, many of the steps taken since 2022 resemble strategies sometimes used by individuals preparing for significant legal or financial transitions. For example, the trademark for American Riviera Orchard was filed under Meghan's name rather than jointly. Her later podcast partnership also listed her as the sole host and business partner rather than part of a joint venture. Even earlier creative projects, such as her children's book, The Bench, were structured primarily around her individual authorship. Bauer identifies 2022 as a turning point because that was when the shift toward more individual projects appeared to accelerate. Public appearances together became less frequent, and several professional announcements focused on separate initiatives rather than joint branding. From Bauer's perspective, those changes may indicate a broader strategic transition already underway. He also points out that California law includes a 6-month waiting period tied to certain legal processes, which can influence timelines for couples who reside in the state. Residency requirements and filing procedures often shape how legal timelines unfold if major life decisions are made. If any legal separation process were ever initiated, several mechanisms connected to prenuptial agreements could immediately come into effect. Those provisions often outline how assets are divided, how intellectual property is managed, and what happens to jointly developed brands or business ventures. In agreements involving public figures, clauses about titles, media projects, and brand ownership can carry particularly complex implications. Bauer believes the clause he highlighted earlier, page 14, clause 7, could play a central role in determining who controls certain aspects of the brand built around. Harry and Meghan's public story. If that interpretation is correct, it could affect who has the authority to develop future media projects connected to their shared narrative. But one question still lingers over the entire discussion. Does Harry fully understand the implications of the agreement he signed? Bauer suggests that people close to him believe he senses that tensions exist but may not fully grasp the legal complexities surrounding their financial arrangements. Observers have pointed to moments where Harry appeared visibly emotional while discussing the pressures surrounding media coverage and legal battles connected to his privacy concerns. Those moments led some commentators to speculate about how much stress the situation may be placing on him personally. Sources referenced in Bauer's reporting also suggested that Harry has felt increasingly isolated at times while dealing with legal disputes and ongoing public scrutiny. Legal challenges can become extremely expensive, and advisors often warn clients about the financial exposure associated with long court battles. According to Bauer's interpretation, continuing those legal fights may create additional financial strain. His theory is that once legal separation proceedings begin, if they ever do, the financial responsibilities connected to those cases could become part of the broader asset discussions between the two sides. Bauer's overall conclusion is dramatic. He believes that the clause in the prenuptial amendment could ultimately determine who controls the majority of the brand and business ventures built during the marriage. If his interpretation proves accurate, it could reshape how future projects connected to their shared story are managed. For now, however, the agreement itself remains private, and the full details have not been publicly released. Much of the conversation surrounding Bauer's claims, therefore, remains centered on interpretation rather than confirmed legal documentation. Still, the theory has captured the attention of royal watchers and media analysts around the world because it connects legal strategy, business decisions, and public relations, moves into one complex timeline. So now the conversation shifts to you. Do you think Bauer's investigation uncovered a real pattern behind these decisions? Or could the connections simply be coincidences that look dramatic when viewed together? Share your thoughts in the comments, leave a like if you found this breakdown interesting, and subscribe so you don't miss what happens next as this story continues to unfold.